college football is a mess right now. College football, oh man. The NCAA canceled all of the Division II and Division III fall championships because of COVID-19. UConn football, I think partially because they don't make any money playing college football. UConn football they actually lose money, about $10 million a year. UConn football has announced the cancellation of their football season due to risks that are, present by COVID. It's presented by COVID is the word I'm looking for. And I think most interesting in all this stuff going on in college football right now is that in the Pac-12, there is a group of players who have come together in a movement they call the #WeAreUnited movement. There are roughly 400 players at this point that are a part of this. They gave a list of demands. They said, hey, Pac-12, here's a list of stuff we want, and if we don't get it, then we are going to sit out for the season if our demands are not met. Here are their demands. They want health and safety protections for COVID-19. They want better health care all around for football players. They want to end racial injustice in college sports. They want to have guaranteed medical coverage, like I just mentioned. And they want the rights to their name, image, and likeness and fair market pay. Now, there are a couple noteworthy things here. They said they want 50% of the revenue from college football to go to the players. And people say that's a crazy high amount. And when you think about it, it's actually not crazy for the people that are doing the work to get 50% of what they're doing. What's crazy is the thought that the people at the top are going to give up 50% of their revenue to the players. That's not going to happen. But it has to be a crazy high amount that the players bring to the Pac-12, because what the Pac-12 is going to try and do is say, okay, let's negotiate. Let's have a conversation. They're going to haggle. They're going to go back and forth. And if you're going to do that as the players, you got to start high. You can't start at 6% because then they're going to talk you down to 2%. If you start at 50%, okay, let's have a conversation. And they talk you down, but you're not going to go down as far. I don't know if that makes crazy or not, but you got to start really, really high in a negotiation like that if you're the players' side. Now, this is really, really important to say. I keep hearing people say that they don't want players to be compensated. People say, I don't agree that college athletes should be compensated. And what's overlooked is that players are actually already compensated. A college football player gets an education, they get food, they get housing. If they're on scholarship, they get all those things. Here's the problem. It's not that first of all, I think part of it is that the conversation we're having isn't quite right. People say players shouldn't get compensation. Well, no, they already are given compensation. The problem is that while food and a dorm and classes does have a monetary value, it's too low. The amount of stuff players are getting, the value that they're getting is not equal to what they're worth. When you have a value, you should be paid something along the lines of the value you bring in my opinion. Colleges make millions and millions of dollars. The big colleges, not the small ones. We'll talk about that difference in a minute. But the Power 5 conference schools like Alabama, LSU, Washington State, they make millions of dollars off of college football. And the players really don't get paid fairly based on the value they bring in for the university. Now, I know that behind the scenes, first of all, I guess I know people behind the scenes that are involved with the Pac-12 movement. And what happened is that players had to go home during coronavirus. Coronavirus sent guys home, and they couldn't be on campus, and they had a lot of time to sit around. They went home, and some of them saw their parents lose their jobs, and they saw people they know get sick with coronavirus or even die. And some guys went back from college to intense poverty, and sometimes even that poverty was caused by coronavirus. And so college football players were at home with a lot of time to think about stuff. And they realized, man, my family's struggling for food, or people are sick, or we have people that can't afford to do this or that. Meanwhile, my college is making millions and millions of dollars. And I can't even post on Instagram with an ad that makes money, right? I can't. I'm missing out on so much money because of the rules of college football. I'm not getting paid fairly. What's happening here? Why is this happening? And I want to be honest about something. The degrees that many college football players get are kind of a joke. And if you want, you can blame the athlete when I say that. You can say, well, if an athlete really wants a degree, they can go find one. And yes, you can. Especially if you go to like Stanford, you're going to have an easier time getting a real degree than you are at most schools. But if you want a legitimate degree, a really tough medical science degree, or an engineering degree, or a really tough, complicated, tough, hard classes degree, and my English is broken there, but the point is, if you want to take tough classes in college and play football at the same time, you're going to have the college football program fight against you every step of the way. The reality is that players are asked to sacrifice their education to make football work. Guys are fitting school around football. Nobody's really fitting football around their education because, again, they're asked to do so. Guys are discouraged from getting harder degrees. They often are communication majors. They are asked to pick classes that, based on what fits into the schedule of football practice. And most athletes get communication degrees. I was a communication major myself. I took a bunch of communication classes. I was in a college of communication, not at one school, but at 3. Let me tell you, communication degrees are majority nonsense. It's a lot of stuff you can learn on Google. It's a lot of stuff that's common sense. And it's a lot of stuff that, honestly, it's a waste of time and ridiculous. Maybe that's all college. I know that a communication degree is, it's not, it's just easy nonsense and a lot of filler, kind of busy work. And when athletes get crappy degrees, they don't have the skills required to get jobs in a competitive situation with other graduates, where it's like, we have a guy who played college football who isn't very good at writing and making memos and stuff, or we have a guy who's got a degree from this other place and he has better training and he had an internship and he's got this and that. Often, when you see a college football player graduate, I know so many former athletes who played football in college. They have a degree from a major university, and now they work a minimum wage job. And it's tough because you're like, well, they got to work better on skills, but it's also, they were incentivized the whole way to do it a certain way. And I want to talk about COVID because I think the most reasonable thing that players asked for, and by the way, I want to say the reason why I went on a rant about college is because people keep saying, well, they get degrees. And you can get a degree. It's really hard. And often you're incentivized to not get a very good degree, is my point. You're not paying them. And the thing that you always say, people say, well, they're getting paid in education. The education they're paid, they're given in college to play football often isn't really that great either. Now, COVID is important. I want to talk about English is hard. I want to talk about coronavirus because the most reasonable thing the players asked for in their list of demands from the Pac-12 was their safety measures related to coronavirus. A friend of mine's a dean of a college, and they said that colleges really have no idea what they're doing and how to handle COVID. They are hoping they're going to open up classrooms in the fall. They're probably going to open up classrooms. And then the question everyone I know at a university is telling me is saying, we think, honestly, it's going to last 2 weeks. We think it's only a matter of time before we're forced to shut down again and send all the kids home. We just hope we get a couple checks from room and board and meal plans and stuff like that, because colleges need the money that dorms bring in. In fact, I know people at Oregon State University who are living in a dorm this fall and taking classes online because colleges need that revenue. Colleges are really, really over-leveraged right now. There's a lot of problems going on. And one of the problems is that colleges, again, have no idea how to actually handle coronavirus. And the problem is that there isn't actually an answer. Nobody seems to know how to handle coronavirus. There are so many unknowns. They can say, wear a mask. They can say this, they can say that. But there's a lot of stuff people are just, they have no idea how to handle it. And players showed up to workouts. A lot of players around the country. Some schools are handling things better than others, but some players showed up from their houses, from being on quarantine from coronavirus. They got to campus, they've been going to workouts, and they realized, oh my gosh, we are shocked at how few precautions there are at our college. Some colleges are not handling coronavirus well at all, and the precautions are not there. Players feel unsafe. They don't know what to do. A lot of that stuff led to why the Pac-12 We Are United campaign came to be. Now, what's interesting is how many guys are afraid to talk about the Pac-12 movement. Athletes are afraid to say anything because they don't want to lose their scholarship, even if they agree. I've talked to a lot of guys. I've talked to guys from all kinds of different backgrounds, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different racial backgrounds, everything, all over the board. And really what it comes down to is a player who's got a middle-of-the-road talent who hasn't proven himself. A player like that, for the most part, is afraid to voice any kind of opinion here because they don't feel like they can afford to lose their scholarship. They think that they're in danger of being replaceable. And it's just interesting how many players look at what the Pac-12 is doing and privately are willing to say, I agree with that, but publicly are afraid to come out and say anything at all. Now, when it comes to paying college football players, and we're bouncing all around to a lot of different stuff, I'm trying to explain the mess of college football, and it's honestly such a complicated issue. I have no idea how to properly do it in an order, so we're just kind of throwing everything at the wall, trying to do it in an order, trying to do it in a helpful way. In Division I football, you have 5 Power 5 conferences, the Pac-12, the ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12. And then you have the non-Power 5 conferences. That's schools like Marshall, Bowling Green, San Diego State University, smaller colleges that do not generate as much revenue from their college football program. And a Power 5 school like Oklahoma makes millions and millions of dollars from their football program. Meanwhile, a school like Bowling Green does not make millions of dollars. Sometimes, in fact, a school like Bowling Green, a school like UConn, for example, loses money having a college football team. They lose money because of the scholarships, because of the travel, because of the funds, this and that, the facility, yada, yada. A team like UConn loses money doing college football. And so you cannot expect a team that doesn't generate a lot of revenue in college football. I don't know where the money comes from to pay those people. That's where I'm trying to be very reasonable here. You can't create money that doesn't exist. So Bowling Green, who doesn't make millions of dollars playing football, they can't pay their players. There's no money to pay the players. But I do believe that schools making millions and millions of dollars, schools like LSU, Alabama, they got to pay their players. They should. But again, a school that doesn't have as high a revenue should not. There's that line, it matters. If you aren't bringing in millions of dollars for your school, how can your school pay you? And when you decide where you're going to go to school, if you go to a small program that doesn't make any money, you shouldn't expect to be paid. If you want to get paid someday, maybe go to a school like Alabama where they're making a ton of money in revenue. Because a football player at Alabama brings in a lot more revenue and maybe should be paid for it because they're doing the work. An analogy for this is, well, first of all, a player at Sacramento State, for example, the value is lower for that player because they're not bringing in money. A great model for this, another analogy, a way to explain this is that part of why you shouldn't pay a player at Sacramento State the same as you do Alabama, other than the obvious reason they don't make money, is there's other places that do this. Minor league baseball, a minor league baseball player makes very, very little money because they generate very, very little money. You make maybe $500 a week playing AAA baseball right now. I think there's a move where in a couple, like next year, maybe they're going to raise it by another $100 a week. Like, woo, $500 to $600. Oh, but the point is, if you play AAA baseball, you're making nothing. You're making a very, very tiny amount of money. And when you go one step up from AAA baseball to the major leagues, maybe you hit, one more home run every 10 at-bats, or maybe you're like, man, I am hitting one more, single every 10 at-bats. I'm getting on base a little bit more, hit like 10 more home runs in the season. You go from minor league baseball, AAA, to Major League Baseball. And One step up from minor league baseball is Major League Baseball, and one step up, the minimum salary you can make, the minimum salary is $563,500. You go from making $500 a week to $500,000 a year. It's like roughly $40,000, whatever the math is there, to $500,000 a year. That's crazy, and that's the minimum. You might make way more. And it's the same with Bowling Green. Bowling Green or Eastern Washington University or Sacramento State or Marshall, they are the minor leagues compared to Alabama or USC. If you go to a Bowling Green, I know I'm saying their name a lot. If you go to UConn, you got to be reasonable. They're not a Power 5 school. They have little income. They can't afford to pay their players. Be reasonable. If players ever want to be paid, they have to be reasonable. And all this amounts to one thing. At some point, college football is going to change. We are headed towards change in college football. But it's going to happen very, very slowly. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I don't know that even the We Are United campaign in the Pac-12, I don't even know that that's going to change things in college football, but it is the beginning of change. It's maybe the thing that gets the ball rolling so that 5 years from now, things will change. College football is a massive, massive thing. College football is like a glacier. You know how big a glacier is? A glacier is so big, it's measured in acres of land. That's how big a glacier is. It's not measured in feet or yards. It's measured in acres, which is ridiculous. A glacier is a massive, massive slab of ice. And glaciers do move, though. Glaciers move. They move around. But they do it very, very, very slowly. College football is a glacier. It's going to move very, very slowly. But it will, in fact, move. It will, in fact, change. But it's going to take a long time for that to happen. The Pac-12 movement is the beginning of something. It's the beginning of something. It might take 6 years before players are ever actually paid in college football. But eventually, college football is going to change. Now, one interesting possible discussion that has happened with the NCAA right now is that maybe the NCAA could be dissolved. Because colleges right now need the revenue college football brings in. They've lost a ton of money. Kids are not living on campus. Kids who are at home. Everything's going very badly right now for college football, or for colleges, period. Not the football programs, the schools themselves. And if the NCAA does, in fact, cancel college seasons, then it could be possible that conferences say, screw you, we don't need the NCAA to have a season. We're going to have a season anyway. The Pac-12 has a season. They're already going to play themselves. They're just going to play their schedules. NCAA isn't a part of it because they need the money. And it's very clear this is all about money. Players are nervous. They're risking their health. And at a time like this, I don't blame anybody who's nervous risking their health, especially while they're being underpaid or not paid at all. A little bit weird. They are being paid. They're being paid in online classes and some food and a place to live. But that's massively underpaid compared to the money they make for the university. Now, my final point is this. Some people say that if you ever do, in fact, pay college football players, which is, in my opinion, only a matter of time, people say that paying college football players is going to ruin college football because it's going to become all about the money, and the teams with the most money are the ones that are going to win. Well, to be clear, that's what already happens, right? Oklahoma wins because they have a great facility, and they have a lot of money, and people want to be there, and they can pay their coach a lot of money. And Alabama wins because they have a lot of money, and they have great facilities, and they have great uniforms, and they can pay Nick Saban a lot of money, and Nick Saban wins games. The more money you have, the more likely you are to win in college football. That already happens, right? So don't say that paying the players is going to ruin the competitive spirit of college football, because honestly, it's already ruined. Alabama and Texas have way better football facilities than Boise State. Let's go back to Bowling Green. How can Bowling Green compete for recruits with Alabama? Oh, they can't. Bowling Green is never going to steal a recruit from Alabama. It's never, ever going to happen that a player is going to go, oh man, the offer that Bowling Green gave me is way better than Alabama. No way. No way. But mostly, again, this comes down to who has the most money. Now, a change has got to happen eventually in college football. It's going to happen. And in order for that to happen, I think players, because it's about the money, right? Because it's in college football, players indirectly see the money right now. The way that a player gets to experience the money they're making in college football is by the program saying, we're getting you a new locker. We're getting you a shoe deal. We're getting you this. We're getting you that. We're giving you free stuff. And my whole argument is instead of indirectly getting players money through a new facility and new dining halls and this or new that, how about we directly give the players the money they're making? I think that's a better solution to take care of the players, get them what they need, give them something they can literally send to their family to help their family back home. All right, guys. So again, I think players should be paid. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a long time for that to happen.